Oh, what is going on with your lips?
Brakken, you're in timeout. Lisa, what's going on with your face?
I put my younger sister in timeout this morning.
You put your
No, actually, yeah, speaking of timeout, I'm getting out of the shower after my run, and I heard Brakken come upstairs from his workout, and right away Brayden, our oldest, says, Mira's being out of control. And I hear Brakken say, is that true? And then I can't hear what's going on, and he says, you're not being out of control, and I can't really hear. And then he says, all right, everyone but Mira on the steps, which is like our timeout place.
Oh.
So I'm thinking, what's going on? So I put two and two together. Well, then he said, if you're not lying, then everyone else is. That means they have to sit on timeout.
Oh, did you guilt her?
But that
into telling the
included
truth?
his sister, who's like 27 or 29 or whatever she is.
Well,
I sat her right on the stat. That's a power move.
Tell us.
She looked at Brayden and she goes, do you think I have to? And Brayden, just because he's a rule follower, kind of looks at me and goes, well, he is your older brother and this is his house. So he backed me right up on it.
Backed you up on what specifically?
Punishing my sister. Sitting my 27-year-old sister on the steps.
Huh. I guess I maybe I won't ask why, but I'm interested to hear as to why. And also, you being authoritative would be, I don't know if I've seen you reprimand your kids when we've been together. Neither of you, because they're good kids for the most part, I assume. What is that like? What is reprimanding Brakken like?
They're very good. The kids are very good, and that's all because of Brakken. I am a total pushover. I call him the enforcer in the house. So
right.
luckily he's like cool with it, you know?
Yeah. We put in the work early on them, and because they're good kids, it took. So, yeah, we very rarely have to reprimand them.
Well, good. When I was a kid, my mom would have been the pushover, and I could get away with absolutely anything. And all my dad would have to do is turn and look at me, and I would burst into tears. He didn't even have to say anything because he was the enforcer. It took very little because what he said went. So maybe there's a little of that. I don't know.
Mira has gotten to the point where she'll come up and she'll whisper in my ear, whatever it is, can I have a piece of candy? And Brakken just knows, like, if she's whispering in my ear, she's asking for something that likely he would say no to, and I'll say yes, you know? Mm-hmm. So, candy. Yeah.
If she's doing something she's not supposed to and Lisa sees it, she'll say, Mira. And Mira just turns and her eyes get wide and she stares right at me, knowing that if it comes, it's coming from that direction.
Yeah, well, that's fun. I was just going to ask you how the kids are because your kids take funny photos. And when I say that, I mean wedding memories popped up for Jess and I, all the photos from our wedding day, which was just over a year ago. So all those memories are popping up, and there's a bunch of like cute and also ridiculous photos of your children. That's all. Escorting us to the bathroom, like we had to walk to the bathroom, and they'd be like, our little escorts, and we'd walk to the bathroom with an entourage. Like, we have pictures of that. It's kind of cute.
I remember that, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Your bodyguard, right? Ayla was your bodyguard?
I think she was the bodyguard, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, and my lips are fine, folks, and Lisa doesn't have a zit. So let's just clarify both of those things. Brakken does, though.
Not on this side.
So before
I do.
You do. That might be a shaving zit, though, like an ingrown hair situation. When
I pulled it off, there's a hair in there, and I pulled it out right before my workout, which was right before this. And if you do anything to your neck right before a workout, that just flares up.
Big mistake is to just shave your neck. Like before a workout, just a regular shave, it'll get all like aggravated. But when we were sitting down to record, Lisa asked to switch sides with Brakken once they got settled because it was her bad side and she had a zit on her forehead, I think, which I can't see. And then I said, it's okay, Lisa.
No.
It's actually the earbud. She needs the earbud on one side.
Okay. Well, I don't care what the reason.
That is true. I used to only run with one earbud in, and I used to always run with my right one in. And then I got this weird thing happening where like I had fluid in my ear, and so something with like the nerve, it was irritating my teeth actually on the top on that side. So my dentist said, "Oh, I think maybe you have an ear infection. I can't say that because I'm a dentist, not a doctor, but I'm going to prescribe antibiotics." So I went on those, and it didn't really like clean it up. It was making my teeth feel like they were, I don't know, really hurting, like the nerve on top of the tooth, but it was not a cavity or whatever. So I went through like 3 rounds of antibiotics, and anyway, now like I just feel uncomfortable having an earbud in that ear because it like never totally cleaned up or whatever. I don't know.
So what plays more into the seat switch, the zit or the ear side?
There's no zit. Only I have the zit.
Okay. Well,
just the earphone.
Okay. My lips are cracked. I got sunburnt lips somehow last week, and now they're cracked on both sides, and I don't like it. And so this came up that it's okay that you don't look, if you're worried about looking your best today, Lisa, we all have our flaws, right? So it's going to be just fine.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's, the floor is going to be your two pretty much this whole episode after I get done introing what we're doing. Because, Lisa, you just finished up something quite incredible, and we're going to talk about it today. Is that right?
Yes. Correct.
What?
It's not a game show. That'd be, what is yes?
How long have you been pursuing this thing? How much time?
3 years. Give or take.
3 years. Okay. And how many days a week are involved in this one pursuit?
Okay, well, this is where it gets a little sketchy. I'm just going to answer your question, but then we can go into it further. But 5 days a week, let's say.
Okay, so for 5 days a week for 3 years, you've been after one goal, and you finally completed that goal last week? This week?
July 17th.
Okay.
Not that I know specifically or anything. But.
It's tattooed on her.
Where would you get that tattoo, Lisa? On your body, physically?
Don't know.
On your shin ridge.
Yeah, just to prove it wrong.
Effing stress fractures. So...
Yeah.
To not dangle the carrot further, so tell us what you did and what you just completed. Just the quick version, and then we'll dive into details.
Okay. I ran every street in the city of Milwaukee.
Wow.
Which
and
is
what do you mean
about
every street?
1,500 streets. Literally every road, like every street in the city of Milwaukee.
Every step of every road.
Every step of every road. There was like, I missed a block, I went back, I ran that block. And I'm not talking like walking didn't count. I was very strict about it. I ran every block of every street in the entire city of Milwaukee.
Why?
That is a good question. It actually started when we moved here to West Dallas. Brakken's mom, Colleen, shout out to Colleen, had biked every street in West Dallas. And I thought that was kind of a cool thing. So I ran every street in West Dallas. West Dallas is much, much smaller than Milwaukee. So that didn't take very much time, relatively speaking. So then, like, if West Dallas is, let's just call it a little rectangle, Milwaukee kind of hugs West Dallas on the top and the bottom, like the north and the south sides, kind of like wraps its little arms around it and then extends to the east. But I decided, okay, now I've run West Dallas, I'm going to kind of like continue going out from like the radius of our house or whatever. So I ran those little arms of Milwaukee. And I was thinking like, okay, this is it for Milwaukee because Milwaukee's huge. Like there's no way I'm going to run Milwaukee. And then I started running like south of there, actually north, I ran first. I ran Wauwatosa next, and that seemed very large, so that was like a huge accomplishment. And then I was like, okay, now what am I going to do? So I just kept going. Like I ran Brookfield and Elm Grove, and then I moved south and I ran Hills Corners and Greenfield and Greendale. Like all of the cities surrounding West Allis, I ran. And it just became like kind of an obsession of mine where I would drive to a new neighborhood and I would run that neighborhood and then I would come home. So eventually I had run basically everything within like a 20-minute drive of our house other than Milwaukee. And Milwaukee is very close. Like I said, it hugs West Allis on either side, but then it's also the eastern border. And it extends like on either side of where I had already been running. So I was like, all right, let's do this. But I'm only running the south side of Milwaukee. That's it. Like, I'm not going to be crazy here. Okay. So
Clearly.
So I started on the south side. And then once I finished that, which took forever because Milwaukee is very large, I was like, okay, now I'm only going to run the east side of Milwaukee, which is so different. It feels like entirely different cities, between the south side and the east side. I ran that, which is like actual city, where like the south side is just residential for the most part. The east side is like the actual city portion when you think of like the city of Milwaukee. Anyway, I ran that, and then, of course, I couldn't not run the north side, so I started on the north side. And I did that too. So we got it all.
Downtown, I assume, is part of one of those sides. I don't know. South side. Obviously, the east side.
Yeah. The east side.
I have so many questions about this as you're talking. Like the nuances of this are actually unlimited. I feel like with a pursuit like this. First of all, and Brakken, really you're going to have to chime in on what do you think? First, you know what? What do you think of this, Brakken? What do you think of this all?
Well, now or then?
Both.
Start with then.
We got nothing but time here.
Well, I'm obviously proud of her now and relieved because initially I didn't like the idea of it.
I know why.
So I grew up here and am well acquainted with the idea that we have an awesome city at times. And there are pockets of our city that you just don't go certain times of day. And there are other pockets you don't go very often at all. And then some pockets that are hit or miss and some pockets that are great. And the idea of my wife going off every single day we can just touch the stats on this. It's 1,500 plus streets and over 3,000 miles of running to complete this. The hours that are going to be spent there, it's just too great of a risk that eventually something goes wrong. And I didn't like it. I don't think I'm a controlling husband, which is what a controlling husband would say.
You're not.
I like to think I'm very supportive, but I'm also a realist, which is that a single female running in the city of Milwaukee, which is a very high crime area. Granted, most of the high crime takes place between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m.
I believe it's labeled
it's a high crime area.
The most segregated city in the U.S., meaning you can go from one block and be
Correct.
fine, and the next block, the income status, crime, poverty, homeless, wealth, right? It's very discrepant, if I'm not mistaken. Did I just throw that stat out there? Is that true?
No, I think that's accurate. Yeah.
Okay.
If not the most, it's like top 3. But I think it is the most. Yeah.
And we have a big homeless population.
Right.
And that worries me more than any other population. Like, segregation really sucks, but it's not a community versus community issue. It's a homeless, it's a mental illness, it's a poverty issue that worries me. And so that weighed heavily on me. So I didn't love it. I loved the pursuit. I did not love what the pursuit could lead to with just that many miles spent running through areas that I myself wouldn't be super comfortable going.
Yeah, that's how
As a matter of fact, Brakken would come with me every once in a while Not too often because he just doesn't like running on streets, which I totally understand. And this is like my thing, not his. So like I don't ever like, I don't want to make him feel bad for not coming with me just to be my protector, if that's like not what he enjoys.
But you run during our podcast mostly.
A lot of times I do. Yes,
Sure.
That's accurate. But yeah, like it, as I got more and more comfortable in the city and started like, I don't know, running some of the more maybe like dangerous neighborhoods or areas, I'd have Brakken come with me, and I could tell he was really uncomfortable, and I was like, I don't know, this is like any other neighborhood,
Yeah.
I started seeing the neighborhoods differently, I think, than someone who, hasn't spent time in them would view them. Like, I would try to see, as I'm pulling up to my, like, parking spot, I'd try and, like, see it from an outsider's perspective. Like, okay, had I not been doing this pursuit and I had just driven into this neighborhood, would I park here? Or if I didn't know this area at all and I was just, whatever, like, would I want to stay and run for an hour? But a lot of times, like, I don't know, as I got more and more into it, and even in like the more dangerous neighborhoods, I was just feeling more and more comfortable, I think, is kind of a funny way of putting it. But I just really got to see, and we can get into it more, but I will say first, there was one neighborhood that had a bunch of like homeless, it was like a homeless encampment, and that I probably did feel the most comfortable. That was probably my least comfortable neighborhood of the whole city. Other than that, though, like the really low income neighborhoods where we're talking the houses look like, our garage or smaller than our garage, where you can see like bullet holes through the windows, or the grass hasn't been cut in who knows how long. Like even those neighborhoods, I noticed people don't sit in their houses because it's too hot. Well, I was running this in the summer, so It's too hot. They don't have air conditioning. And so they're all outside, and it's like what I picture the old, quote unquote, olden days were like, where people sat out on their front porch. They're like all hanging out together. Those ended up being, no joke, some of the friendliest neighborhoods I ran in because everybody's out. There were a bunch of people that'd be like, I see you, girl, way to go, or whatever. They're like shouting at me. The women were very encouraging. The men had other things to say for the most part. But it just, I came to like appreciate even those neighborhoods that you wouldn't normally like be in and think, oh, this is such a great neighborhood, for the people. And then there's also just like hidden gems everywhere in Milwaukee. And I know you have seen it, but I take pictures when I'm running. Like literally as I'm running, I don't stop to like frame the picture. So a lot of times I have to like, when I'm posting on Instagram, I have to like tilt the picture so that it isn't sideways or whatever. Anyway, that became a huge like passion of mine, was taking these pictures as I'm running and finding these like absolutely beautiful little things in even the worst looking neighborhoods. So churches, I became kind of obsessed with like the old churches or the old homes that are like the Cream City brick or the Lannon stone. Just, these are things I never ever paid attention to before.
There's a lot of history in
I was not
Milwaukee.
like into architecture or history. What's that?
There's a lot of history in Milwaukee. People think Chicago being lakeside and a barge route for transportation and goods, and Milwaukee was right there with it. So you have a lot of old structure there, which people don't really. Milwaukee gets swept under the rug that way. But continue.
It totally does. Yeah, it totally does. Like the churches or the schools, I think the schools are absolutely beautiful, and they've come through and like painted a bunch of them, and so those are stunning. And anyway, just all of these pockets. When they were originally like settling Milwaukee, there were groups of people who were coming over, like immigrants coming over, like the Germans kind of settled together, or the Polish settled together. And so they created all these communities, which now kind of translates roughly to like the neighborhoods in Milwaukee. And so many of these neighborhoods are like little communities in and of themselves, where they have a green space, like a park. They've got a school, at least one school. They've got churches. It's each neighborhood is like its own little town. And you think of Milwaukee and you think of just, house after house after house. They're all right next to each other, but they just, like you said, it's history rich. And I love being able to see all of, you can kind of picture like what this neighborhood used to look like when it was in its heyday. So anyway, that became a passion of mine. Taking pictures of those like absolutely stunning things that you wouldn't notice otherwise.
And Brakken, how are you supporting all of this? Because you were
running shoes and gas.
Okay.
A lot of running shoes.
Well, no, let's talk about this.
He got very gassy.
Let's talk about
No,
this.
I'm just kidding.
Well, you're not, but that's the thing. That's perpetual. Brakken, I mean, let's be serious. You had surgeries in here. You couldn't join Lisa on foot, so there may been a bike ride, or Lisa, you are going to choose a safer place to run today versus a non, because, I mean, Brakken kind of got in the way of some of your street running because of his own problems, right? Did that factor in at all for periods of time?
No, I don't think so, really.
Really?
'Cause I'm so used to running, like going out on my own and running. Yeah, Brakken was very supportive, I will say, because this was a huge endeavor. I've got this app called City Strides, which is how I kept track of all of the streets. So I would screenshot the neighborhood that I wanted to run in, and then I'd open an Instagram story, and I'd put it in there, and then I'd use the draw tool on Instagram, which I just found to be easier than like Google Photos drawing tools or whatever. But I would draw out a map, color code it. So I start on red, go to the orange, go to yellow, label all of the streets. That way I could ensure I was hitting every street in that neighborhood and that I was starting and ending in the same place. It didn't I wasn't all of a sudden, 2 miles away and I was ready to be done. So I would plan the map. Then I would go into Google Street View and I would basically walk through most of those streets that I knew I was going to be running because I had planned it. And see, what does this neighborhood kind of look like? Are there areas that, is there like a safe place to go if something were to happen? So I'd spend time then on Google Maps, and then I would check the Milwaukee crime map every day. I would go to that specific neighborhood and I would check to see, what kind of, the crime map is like vaguely specific, if that makes sense. Like it will say, like there was a shooting, but it doesn't say like robbery or whatever. So I would see how many shootings happened in this neighborhood, what time did they happen. If they were all like 2 a.m, then I'm like, okay, cool, that's fine. So anyway, I spent a lot of time on the crime map.
So shootings aren't a big deal. Like that doesn't move the radar. As long as it's after dark, it's not a big deal.
You know what? On the south side, a shooting was a big deal. I was like, oh, there was a shooting. Let's not run that right now. Like, let's wait till that calms down or whatever. When I got to the north side, there were so many that I was like, if I don't run where there's been a shooting in the last however many days, I'm not going to finish this running Milwaukee. So I need to be smart about it, obviously. Yeah. But I need to, run where there is crime and where there have been shootings. So
I'm going to interrupt here. You can see where, as a husband, this was a very nerve-wracking endeavor because that's how this started from my point of view. I grew up in Milwaukee. We moved into West Dallas when I was a sophomore in high school, but I grew up in Milwaukee, and I knew it, but not well enough to know it the way she knows it now, which is kind of ironic. But I knew everything that was happening, but not the nuances of it. And then so when she starts pulling up the crime maps, and it's like, this is what I knew. Like, there's a shooting every single night in the city of Milwaukee.
Well, and that's the sad thing is that you hear about, I mean, being in the area, you hear about, not every, because there are so many actually, but you hear about all of this crime and you hear that it's so terrible and, you know, there are robberies and there are shootings and there's, you know, kidnapping or whatever the case may be. And so you hear about that constantly, but what you don't hear about, which I started because I was doing so much research on the neighborhoods, like the community center has, you know, a dance in the street on Tuesday, and the community center is doing, you know, one of my last runs that I ran in Milwaukee, there was a community center was doing a garbage cleanup, and they had, oh my goodness, they had so many people there, and they're like cheering and yelling, there's loud music, and they're out picking up trash, and like, you don't hear about those things because that doesn't really like drive the news, you know? So that became kind of eye-opening for me.
And for me as well. And what I realized was that A, I didn't know my city as well as I thought I did, and B, it's just like a person where no one's all good or all bad. Like we're nuanced. And depending on when you see us, you're going to see a different side of us, and that's quickly became what I realized, and she realized first, and I had to be convinced of over time because I was also feeling protective of her. But it's that these neighborhoods are not all one thing, and most of them are one thing during the day and one thing during the night. And as soon as that became apparent to me that, yes, there's a shooting every single 24 hours. There's a robbery, armed robbery, every single day. But it's not. It's every night. There are very few. I mean, the shootings happen during the day, but all the bad stuff happens after the streetlights come on. And it's funny because that was our rule. Again, growing up in Milwaukee, we were allowed to bike wherever we wanted without supervision, play with whoever we wanted, go to whatever parks we wanted. But as soon as the streetlights came on, we had to come home. That was very strict. And now, 30 years later, I realize like that's still the rule. Everything's fine for the most part. And then the streetlights come on and there are certain places you need to leave. But Lisa is a lot more empathetic than I am and is very good at seeing the good places, and she learned that a lot quicker in this process than I did. And you talked about the surgeries. So this dates back 3 years, which gets into knee surgery territory and hernia. So I wasn't able to do a lot of the running, so she started in the easy neighborhoods. And then when I was able to start running again, one of our first runs we did together was in this neighborhood that she said, this is going to be kind of like a medium neighborhood. Like it has some crime, but it's going to be okay. And it was one of the worst neighborhoods I've ever seen in my life.
Also, it was garbage day, and it smelled terrible. The whole run, I'm not even exaggerating. It was the top stinkiest run I have ever done. It was like running through a landfill. It was terrible. So the whole time I was thinking, like, poor Brakken. I take him on this run. I tell him, like, it's going to be bad, but not, like, you know, the worst. And it's like just couldn't even breathe. It was so stinky.
I don't have
and
a
the garbage cans are,
top
like,
stinkiest run
over.
list. That's not like a thing I have. Top stinkiest runs.
I've got a top two. There was
Okay.
one on the south side, one on the north side. But anyway.
So the garbage cans are overflowing. One of the signs that you start entering into low income is that the yards start changing. Like people stay on top of their cleanliness of their yards less, probably because there are more pressing needs in their life. But so that was that huge sign. Like the garbages are overflowing. There had been a storm the night before, so everything was tipped over. The streets were clogged with trash, and so water is running into the street. Milwaukee has really good drainage. Our sewer system's really good, but things were overrun, and so there's literal sewage running across the road. It smells terrible, and we saw 3 domestic incidents during this run. I was very, very uncomfortable. And when she says, like, I can tell Brakken's really uncomfortable on this run, it's the kind of thing, like, I could run here and be kind of relaxed knowing that if something happens, like, I just take off. It's going to be okay. But now with someone else there, it feels like there's just more to worry about. So anyways, it was one of the most uncomfortable runs of my entire life. And this was after she prepped it, like, this is not the worst neighborhood I've run. And after that day, I'm like, this isn't the worst thing you've run? This was horrible. So then my radar was set to scan very finely after that point because I was very worried. And it took months for her to be like, I still haven't run anything that looked like that. Like the crime map said that was a medium neighborhood, but that was visually it was really, really bad. So again, early on, I was not on board, but over time, her pictures and then running with her a little bit more, it wins you over.
Okay, so actually to go back, you asked like how he supported me. So I started saying, I did all this research, blah, blah, blah. But the commute also, like he works from home. I now work from home, but I wasn't working at the time. So, like I had all day, and no commute because being at home. But the drive time started for some of like the northern part of Milwaukee, the absolute northern part, like Granville, was like 25, 27 minutes. Milwaukee, I just put in my map because I don't know how many miles it is north to south, but to go from one corner to the opposite corner, like from here to here, if we're talking like a big rectangle, is like a 40-minute drive. And that doesn't really even take you through downtown. So Milwaukee's just that big that anyway, the commute time started, we're talking like an hour of drive time, plus all the plan time. And then I always felt like, okay, if I'm driving half hour or whatever to this neighborhood, I don't want to go and I don't want to spend an hour driving to run for 25 minutes, So I try and like make it worth my time. So, I ended up almost every time that I ran was like 8 miles. I found I could complete. Milwaukee their streets are on a grid. They've got, sorry, Brakken's scooching closer to me.
We have dual stools here.
Cute.
I was thinking before this, we need
well.
like a love seat or something.
This is like a confessional, Kirk. You're familiar with those.
Lisa, why don't you just sit on his lap?
Yeah, right?
Downside is it's also a very muggy day, and it's starting
It
to
gets
warm
warm
up
in here, yeah.
Yeah.
We both worked out right before this and didn't shower.
I showered.
Well, it didn't take.
Yikes.
Take. Thanks, Brakken. Okay, going back to what I was saying before Brakken so rudely interrupted. Milwaukee's streets are on a grid system for the most part, and the north-south streets are numbered. The east-west streets are a name, and it goes like, this is going to be very specific. Every 0.05 miles is a street if you're running the numbered streets, and every 8 blocks is a half mile going east-west. Going north-south, every 4 blocks is a half mile. So I got it figured out so that I could run half mile by half mile, like a half mile by a half mile square. And that is almost exactly 8 miles. No matter how I plan it, it comes out to 8 miles. So that is not always a neighborhood because many neighborhoods are much larger than that half mile by half mile square. But it fills in the map very nicely if I can complete those 8 miles. So all of this to say, this became a very timely or time-consuming endeavor of mine. It's at least 2 hours a day when I'm doing this, and that doesn't necessarily count all of the planning. Actually, that doesn't count the planning. 2 hours is almost what it takes me door to door. No matter where I'm going, somehow it always ends up almost exactly 2 hours. And then you have all of that planning time that I had talked about. So that's where Brakken's support comes in, because when you're talking at least 2 hours, maybe 3 with the planning a day for a pursuit that is like one that he's not even super thrilled about to begin with, the support was actually huge in that he was okay with me taking all of that time to do this silly thing. When you can leave the door, go outside and run. Since I love running streets, we live on a street. I could go outside and run and be done in an hour here. And then there's no planning, no drive time, whatever. So that's where the support came in, I think.
You agree, Brakken?
Yeah. But it was one of those things like I don't want to say you have to earn support from your partner, because you don't. Whether or not she had earned it, like she should get it. But we went out, we moved our family to Colorado for my training. When we were out there, door to door was never less than 70 minutes. even though we lived 30 meters from the trail, and the trail could take me up 50 miles straight if I wanted to, I didn't always use that trail. And we'd drive to the incline, or we'd drive to Bar Trail, or I'd drive to Cheyenne Canyon, or whatever it was going to be. And so every day, I rarely ran less than an hour there. It was usually 70 to 90 minutes was the average day. And if there was a workout, it was closer to 2 hours because it was warm up and cool down. And I was doubling many days, and then some weight room work. And I would nap with the kids every day. So she just had all these hours of me gone. Not that there's like this, you have to balance the ledger, but yeah, she deserved to be able to pursue her running the way I got to pursue my running. And it doesn't matter if mine led to races or the potential for income or not. Like, it was my passion. Competition was my passion. Competition is not her passion. I can't support her to a race because she doesn't want to race. So this is the best version that we can do of that.
No, that makes sense. How long ago was Colorado? 2016 you came back? 2016?
Yeah, 13 to 16 roughly.
A while ago. And just to touch on, because I don't want to, I think seeing
it.
No, because Ayla was 3 months when we moved there, and she was born in 2015. So we moved there in 2015.
For the second time. We stayed out in Falcon for 9 months first.
Okay, that's true. Anyway, sorry.
Don't be sorry. What I was going to say was...
It's hard to say. Let's just say 13 to 14 through 16 and 17.
Okay. Vague.
Very vague.
Was that talking about like seeing the beauty in sort of like the assumed nasty parts of town or whatever it is. I just want to be, I've lived in a number of cities. I've traveled plenty. I lived in Milwaukee. I live in Minneapolis now. The areas that Lisa is talking about is in every city, right? It's not like Milwaukee's a slum and it's only dangerous. I mean, truth be told, some of the most beautiful neighborhoods I've ever been in are in Milwaukee. In some of the areas, they're absolutely stunning, right? And they're these big, wide streets with grass middle dividers, and so there's like a lot of different types of neighborhoods in Milwaukee. At the same time, I went to grad school in Milwaukee, so I lived near the Milwaukee campus while going to grad school. And in my first year there, my car got broken into 3 times through the windshield. 3 times in 1 year, my car got broken into. Yeah, at the same time. And I was not in a bad neighborhood nonetheless. So, like, it's also very real what you're talking about. 3 times in a year is, I think, a record, but it was commonplace. It was like you walked out to your car in the morning, and it wasn't like, okay, whose car window's broken? It's like, or is there a car window broken? It was like, okay, whose car window is broken and how many are broken? And I wish I were joking, but I'm not. But nonetheless, it's not.
I don't want to speak for her.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll go for it.
Well, I'm just going to say, like, but living in Minneapolis now, the Twin Cities, which is twice the size of Milwaukee, like, it's just like that. There's areas everywhere. I think this challenge in any major city would be a challenge. It's not Milwaukee exclusive, and there's going to be a half a dozen people that listen to this and think, like, I have no greater meaning to my running. This sounds intriguing to me. Like, I don't think you're exempt from these problems anywhere that you run. If it's a metropolitan area, right? It's just Milwaukee might be a little heavier on that side in spaces, but just saying, like, I don't think it's like, I guess I'm defending Milwaukee because I have a little bit of a soft spot because there's so many great areas and good places there. Just thought that was worth saying.
Thank you. I agree.
Yeah.
My parents were not crazy about this either. I grew up in Lake Geneva, which is a very small town. People, I think, if you have heard of Lake Geneva, I think you think of like the mansions around the lake, like multi-million-dollar mansions. So people think Lake Geneva is kind of like a ritzy area. I'd say it's any other small town with maybe, anyway. So my parents still live in Lake Geneva. They have their whole lives. And so when we moved here, there were a lot of comments like about Milwaukee and the crime in Milwaukee. And then when I started running, they just didn't love that. Every time I would not every time. Many times I would get in the car after a run and I would call my mom just to like have that communication back and forth. And she'd say, "What are you doing?" I'd say, "Oh, I just got done with the run." She'd say, "I hope you were safe." And I'm like, "Well, of course I'm being safe, Mom." Like, you know.
What does being safe look like in that circumstance? I guess now that you say, what does that look like when? No, really, what does that mean?
Like for her or for me? Because
for you, what does being safe look like?
Probably different ideas.
Yeah, no, from your perspective.
Okay, well,
how do you be safe?
Yeah, for me personally, I would say, okay, this is going to sound very weird, but when I started feeling like I was in rougher neighborhoods, I changed the way I dressed. I used to wear like spandex shorts and a sports bra. I wore a shirt like a tank top or a loose-fitting shirt every day in those neighborhoods. I started wearing like running shorts rather than spandex.
Intentionally to draw less attention draw less attention. Okay.
Yes. It also looks like, I know I said earlier I only wear one headphone. In some neighborhoods, I would not listen to music at all because I wanted to make sure I was really hearing what was going on around me or coming up behind me or whatever. So the headphone thing was big. I consider being safe all of the research that I did. I wasn't just going out there blind. I really did spend a lot of time researching the neighborhoods and looking at the crime maps to the point where sometimes I would pull up the crime map while I was running to be like, what's going on?
But nothing ever deterred you in the moment from like being like this one neighborhood or this one street. You dreaded it or you put it off or you're like, I don't feel good about this. And if you did, what was your approach? Like, I'm going at 7 a.m. I'm curious there.
Yeah, that did happen. No, yeah, that did happen. Like once I drove to a neighborhood and there were people all over, but it didn't look like the type of people I want to like be running past. So I just kept on driving and I went to like a northern part of the city where it's like kind of country roads up there. There were definitely neighborhoods that I put off. I put off one neighborhood. I planned the run, and then I put it off for an entire year because I just didn't feel comfortable. And I'd look at the crime map, and there was like shootings, every day shootings. As a matter of fact, that neighborhood that I put off for an entire year, when I finally ran it, it is beautiful. It would be really beautiful. It was very beautiful, I should say. Anyway, that was the only neighborhood I ever heard gunshots in. So I could tell they were north of me, and I wasn't going north of the street that I was currently on. So I was like, whoa. Because there were like 6 or 8, I can't remember. I counted as they were happening. I was like, but that's okay. It's north of me. I'm not going that far north. I'm just going to finish this run. Now there's going to be like a heavy police presence. So are people going to be out in the street shooting again? Probably not. So I just finished my run and carried on. But yeah, so I would put off runs until I felt like the crime map was looking better. Some neighborhoods I did save to run with Brakken. I just would put him off until there was a day where he was like, hey, I'm free. And I was like, great, we're going to this neighborhood. It's going to be rough. So, you know, I've been keeping it for you.
Lucky Brakken.
Lucky you.
I was just firing off push-ups and curls in the car.
Getting the pump.
Yeah.
When I was fairly far in this, I'm talking very far, like probably 80% complete, I decided what I ended up doing was running the next safest neighborhood. Every day I'd be like, okay, what's my next safest neighborhood? Run that. So as you can imagine, once you click off the next safest, eventually you're left with the not safest. So I had this whole pocket of Milwaukee that I was working on that was by default the not safest. I ended up getting a little handheld like pepper spray. It has a little knife on the end. So that actually did make me feel really weird because like, you know, I'm running past kids and I'm carrying a knife and that just, so I'd like kind of try and hide it when I'm running past like
one of those that was on your hand at all times, like you ran and it was attached
Yes.
to your hand, right?
Yeah,
right
like
at the ready.
Velcro's around your hand.
Jess
Yep.
runs with one of those on
yeah.
occasion when she's not feeling comfortable. She has
Okay.
it. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. What was I going to say about that?
I have a lot of questions still, specific questions.
I got that. Yeah.
A bunch of them, actually. Like a whole litany of questions, but the nuances of this.
Oh, you know what? I know what I was going to say.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm just gonna throw this in there.
Yes.
One of the roughest neighborhoods I was running in, there was a group of men sitting outside of like a car shop. And I heard one of them say something about me. I can't remember what he said. I actually stopped to take a picture. There was like a huge welcome to the neighborhood sign. And I was like, okay, I want to make sure I like get this whole thing in the camera because I'm quite close to it. And I heard him say something about taking a picture or whatever. And this other man goes, you see those muscles? You don't mess with those muscles. I wanted to flex at him. So that was my biggest deterrent, probably. Were my muscles.
Your muscles.
Yeah.
I'm messing with that.
I texted Brakken, you'll never believe what he just said about me.
High T runs in the family.
I guess.
That's right.
That's right.
It's getting warm in here. We're fanning it off.
So
the camera will catch that, but if you put it to like right here, it should be good.
what are you doing opening the door?
Yeah, it's getting stuffed. 2 people in here.
I started sweating talking about my muscles.
This is a part that doesn't get talked about a lot on here, but often Kirk and I both work out right before our podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
And so oftentimes after a quality session, which I have on Thursdays a lot, there's some associated stomach distress. And so usually like 30 to 60 minutes afterwards, I get a couple farts. And it doesn't matter when I'm alone in here. But the room's only like 5x7. So you're hotboxing. But you can't do that with your wife next to you. So
Are you uncomfortable?
just understand that I did a high rocks workout right before this. So like this is an act of mental fortitude for me today.
Your knight in shining armor, Lisa.
I know.
Yeah. We have bubble gut going on right now.
We or you?
Well, I assume both. But it's me.
All right.
It's not me.
Let's get to some details here. So, and I want to talk big picture stuff as well. So, 1,500 streets, okay, right?
1493.
Okay. There's a dead
It started
end.
at 1510, but
Oh.
the app that I use it like reconfigures things. For example, there's a ferry in Milwaukee, and for whatever reason, like the lanes where the ferry parks are counted as streets, 7 different streets right there. I actually ran into the ferry area so I could get those streets and count them, but they're behind a fence. So I just ran right next to the fence, like put through my GPS watch as close to that the City Strides uses nodes. Like a node, if you hit the node, then you've got the street or whatever. So anyway, yeah, I put my watch as close to the node as I could. So it'll like update. So I think those 7 streets are no longer counted in Milwaukee. And there's like the mall in the middle of Marquette campus is counted as a street, even though you're not driving on it. So anyway, it started at 1510 when I started. Now it's down to 1493. So.
Okay, and some of these streets are
specific.
miles long, right? Some of these streets are miles and miles long.
No, not some.
All.
Not some. This is the thing that drives me nuts about Milwaukee. For example, there are some east-west running streets that don't stretch all the way from the east side to the west side. And there will be miles in between, but it's counted as the same street. So I think I've completed a street because I'm to a dead end. And no, there's actually a 3/4 mile stretch of street 4 miles away that I have to go get to. So it ended up same with the north-south streets. Those run literally from the middle all the way north. So it's 8 miles long. So you'll have like North 76th Street, South 76th Street. Both of those 8 miles long. So when we're talking on a grid, like it takes forever many of the runs I ran, I didn't complete a single street because there's still 7 miles stretching either way of that street. So that got to be a little irritating at times. Yeah.
Okay, so city streets decides what are streets, and you complete those streets. If it's a dead end and it happens to be a half mile down, you got to run a half mile down to the dead end, turn around, that next half mile back.
A million dead ends,
doesn't count, right? Yes. It's mileage, but it is what it is. How do you know
running, yes, every section of it.
Okay, and how do you know you've officially completed? Like, how do you know you've done everything? How do you have the peace of mind there?
It's like Strava segments. You got to wait for the GPS to load.
You wait for the GPS to load. It's not in real time, which I wish they would update, that it would like check off the node as you run past it so that you know you've got it. But no, you wait for the GPS to load, and then sometimes sometimes the GPS is not on.
Mm-hmm.
If you are, I can't remember what the app has. I think it allows like 25 feet away from the node, which is in the middle of the street. If you're more than 25 feet away, or your GPS is more than 25 feet away, then it's not counted. So actually, when I was running West Dallas, way long ago now, I had one neighborhood, because of the tree cover, it didn't count. And when I was in West Dallas, I didn't drive to a neighborhood. I ran there. So I ran to this neighborhood. I ran it. I came home, uploaded it, and didn't count anything. And I was like, what? So I went back. I had to do that neighborhood 3 times because it wasn't counting. So that was annoying. But yes,
wow, okay.
That happens.
So the total mileage was 3,000-ish, correct? Milwaukee alone?
3,051 miles in Milwaukee alone, yes.
Okay, are those not counting the doubling back and the extra mileage that didn't count, or is that the amount of miles you put on foot, whether the mileage counted towards city strides or not?
No, I think it's counting everything. The bad thing is, because I've been doing this so long, and because I didn't go into this knowing I was going to be doing the whole thing, I didn't like keep a log or anything. So on this app, City Strides, when you complete a city, it'll give you a little like summary. Like, there are whatever. It's actually kilometers of streets in the city. It took you however many kilometers to complete that, and then it'll tell you when your first run was, and like then the amount of time that it took. So my stats are all based on that. And I don't know if it's 100% accurate because, like I said, I wasn't keeping. I really wish I could go back and find, even like my first run. I went on Strava and just what?
I'm just going to interject that only counts the streets that they map as streets. It doesn't count your total mileage.
Okay.
Because you're at over 1,000 miles this year already.
Okay.
Run. So my guess is that count, you're about 50 to 70% farther than that.
That was what I was kind of getting at, is that question, is how much extra have you run in the process just logistically to get to the streets, and you're doubling back and you're crisscrossing and all of that has to happen a ton. Which also leads me to wonder, like, I know on occasion you go out your front door and run. On occasion, does that just feel like the biggest waste of time of your whole life?
It's so terrible. I can't stand it now. When I run around here, I'm like, oh, this is so boring. I'm hating this. I've just gotten so used to, looking at all of my surroundings, taking in a new surrounding every day, that now when I'm running something I'm familiar with, I'm just like, oh gosh. It's kind of ruined running for me in a way.
Like, joke often, people would say, what are you going to do when you complete this? And we'd kind of be like, move. Because there's nothing else to do but start a new city.
I've run so much in this area. Yeah, like what I have left now is such a long drive. To be honest, I've been feeling really lost since I finished Milwaukee. Luckily, it worked out. I finished Milwaukee 2 days before we went out west, when we went to Mount Rushmore, which I thought, okay, this is going to be like a really good break, because I knew I would have some feelings about finishing this goal I've been going for forever. So I was like, okay, well, I'll be out west. I'll run like trail or some roads out there, or maybe just take some downtime, because I also don't love running in hot and humid weather. So I was like, this will be really good for me. It'll be kind of like refreshing. But no, I didn't enjoy any running out west. And then since we've come home, I think I only ran twice maybe 3 times while we were out there, and it was terrible every time. Since we've come home, I started another city. I'm just kind of like filling in on my map, like the big radius or the big circle. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is boring. I don't like it.
It's not a big
I'm
enough
doing it
task.
so that, yeah, I mean, I think I've run, so in this area, there's Brookfield, and then there's Town of Brookfield. I already completed Brookfield, so now I'm working on Town of Brookfield, but I think I've run there 6 times, and I'm 88% complete. So, I have maybe 2 runs left there. Just feels not, I don't know.
I was trying to save this exact topic for our last topic today.
Okay.
Sorry, I got into it. No. I'm glad you did, because it was very much on the top of my to-do list as far as talking about this goes. I was just going to save it for the end. The now what, right? We talk about running a stupid A race, meaning you go out and race a 50K, and then the come down after that is like, now what? I'm lost, right? There's like this high and you achieve it, and then there's this low that follows. That's the worst part of the whole thing. And then you talk about like a 3-year pursuit. Talk about a come down from something, I can't imagine what that would feel like. To say empty and lost would probably not serve how you're actually feeling. It's like finishing a 1,000-piece puzzle and then just scrambling it and throwing it back in the box and being like, what the heck do I do with myself now? Right? You guys are looking at each other. What does that mean?
No, yeah. Just gazing into each other's eyes. That's it.
Well, we've danced around this topic, but we haven't solved it yet. This is like an ultra come down, but it was a 3-year build to an ultra.
Yeah.
Well, and I have to say, okay, I started. Wait, what year? It's 2024. So in 2023, 2022. I think in 2022 I started the Run the Year goal, which is you run 2,022 miles in that year. I started that, and I didn't complete it because I got a stress fracture. No.
Achilles.
No, it was my shin. Stress fracture? Yeah. Anyway, I didn't complete it. So 2023 rolls around, and I'm like, there's no way I'm doing this. Well, 3 weeks in, I'm like, okay, let's do this. So I ran 2,023 miles. Well, more than that, but that was the goal last year. And I was afraid at the end of last year I was going to have this feeling, because I had worked, let's just call it 2 years on this goal, even though I failed the first year. The timeline never really stopped. So I worked on the Run the Year goal for 2 years. Well, then I transitioned, I was like, okay, what am I going to do? I've been working on this so long, and that was running 40 miles a week, every week, no matter how I'm feeling, basically. No matter what the weather, I'm out there running, which it allowed for me to get a huge chunk of Milwaukee miles, which also lent itself to running those 8-mile runs, because then I run that 5 days a week. It's 40 miles a week. Anyway, I was really nervous about that, but it kind of just transitioned straight into this Milwaukee goal. And I would say that is when I really dedicated myself to running Milwaukee. Prior to that, I was running Milwaukee, but I was also running other cities. I would run on the trails, or I would complete, Brookfield I mentioned, worked on New Berlin a little bit, or I'd take my kids with me, and I didn't necessarily want them to be in Milwaukee, so we'd go to Fox Point, which is like super ritzy. So when you asked how many days a week, I said, well, this is debatable or whatever. I was running 5 days a week, but they weren't all in Milwaukee until about a year ago. Well, the start of 2024. Would that be right? The start of 2024 is when I really started running Milwaukee every single day.
As soon as you got, I would say maybe a little earlier, but you decided you're far enough in, you were going to get it.
I think so. I think that's kind of the timeline. So, like I'm saying, it's a 3-year pursuit, although I wouldn't, there was a lot of other stuff thrown in there, and I wasn't 100% dedicated to Milwaukee those whole 3 years. Because like Brakken said, like, last year I ran 2,060 miles. So, and the year before I ran 2,000 miles or whatever it was. So I would have completed Milwaukee had I been really focusing on it day in and day out. But I wasn't at that point, I would say, until the beginning of this year. But now I've gone from, those 2 run the year goals to completing Milwaukee and really focusing on it every day. So it does feel like, even if I hadn't been focusing on it for 3 years, it was a 3-year build. And I was just going from one goal to the next, to the next, to the next. I never took time off. So, yeah, it's been weird now. Now I'm like, I don't know what to do. I've questioned myself nearly every run since I finished Milwaukee. Like, what am I doing out here? Am I burnt out? Is this something I like truly enjoy at this point? Like, do I need to get back into Milwaukee? I don't know. It feels kind of like empty, And I still love running. I still need that time. If I don't run, I get what would be the running word for hangry? I get rangry if I don't run.
Sure.
So I still need it for my mental health, which I went into on that last podcast I was on. But it just, I don't know. I don't know what's next or to make this better.
Have you felt sad or apathetic about life since finishing after the come down, or have you? I'm being serious. Or have you been able to separate it?
Yeah.
You have.
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you finished you literally hit stop on your watch on that last run a few weeks ago. Like, what was going through your head? What were you feeling or thinking? Was it sort of unceremonious, or was it like you threw yourself
it was,
a bit
actually.
or was it
I
sad?
think because,
or was it like, how did it feel?
Yeah, it was a little like maybe disbelief, because I had been working on it for so long, and for so much of it, I was telling myself, I'm not doing this. Like, it's too dangerous. It's too whatever. There's too many streets. It's so far away. It's a very long commute. It's taking so much time. For so long, I told myself, I'm not doing this. And then I was like, okay, let's go. But then, I don't know, it kind of felt like the end of any other run. And I kept telling myself, like, maybe when I go to plan my next run, like when I go to plan my next Milwaukee run, and there is not anything to plan, it'll hit me. And I think it's just been like, yes, like kind of slowly hitting me every day that I've run since then. Like, it's over. It's sad.
We talked about it a little bit, but this happens in non-short races. Any race where you're not all out the entire way, where it doesn't like build every step, like a mile or a 5K, even a marathon, it gets more intense every step until the finish line, and the finish line's a relief and an accomplishment and like your salvation all at once. All you can think about is getting to that line, and you start to wonder, is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? But it's just there. Where in a really long ultra or a distance-based goal, at some point you realize you're just going to complete it. And in that moment, you have a win. Like, I'm going to do this. But you're not all out through the finish line. So there's very little like pomp and circumstance at the finish line, because it's not a finish line. You hit stop on your watch. But you already realize you completed it days or weeks earlier. So it's a weird anticlimactic thing to watch from my end. And you see it with athletes as well, that if it's not a time-based event, really time-based, the real finish line happened weeks earlier, the day you realized you could do it.
Well, I think the main question I would have would be like with both of like my running when I have a big race on the calendar that I care about, or like with my pursuit outdoors, like I do two things. I run and I spend time outdoors. So much of my internal dialogue is revolved around the next goal and the next accomplishment and how do I pull the strings and move the puzzle pieces. Like I'm either thinking about running or I'm thinking about chasing deer in the woods, and I'm playing chess with myself constantly in my head. The amount of internal, emotional, and mental power that those two things take up for me fills my cup immensely. Right. And you talked about all the planning that you had to do for this and the, who knows, hours into every day and week and looking at maps and figuring it out and making sure you hit your nodes. And then it's like, poof, gone. What on earth fills the space between your ears now, Lisa? I mean that question in like the purest form. Like what goes on in there now? That's a big space to fill.
That has been an issue actually. Like even just while I'm running, when I was running Milwaukee, a lot of like, if I was feeling good that day, I'd want to do extra, but I'd be thinking, how can I set this map up to make sense for the next run? I don't want to, I want it to be cohesive, and so that I'm not going out of my way to hit like a mile or whatever. So if there's 3 miles left in this one section, I'm going to get all of that or save that 3 miles so it makes sense. Anyway,
efficient.
A lot of my mental power was, yeah, exactly. A lot of my mental power was going to that while I was running. And even if I wasn't thinking necessarily, how can I set myself up for future runs? I was really focused on my map. Like, okay, I'm going to run up to center and then take a left to make sure, don't forget that one little dead end right there. You're going to have to come back, really focusing on my map and all of that. So since then I've been like, okay, I don't even know what I want to listen to. Like a couple of times I've gone without music, or I've been listening to like the Eminem station on Pandora. Usually gets me pretty pumped, but even that was like a couple days feeling real lackluster. Dateline sometimes. I had gotten really into listening to Dateline actually after your Glenn episode, which was like, what, a year and a half ago or whatever?
More than that.
Yeah.
Probably,
I listened to his and I was like, okay, cool. So I got really into listening to those, and I started one and I was like, no, I don't want to. So even my mental space when I'm running, I'm like kind of confused. I don't know what to do.
I always know I'm in a weird spot when nothing's hitting the spot that I put. Like I'm just unsatisfied with anything in my ears.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Like I know I'm in trouble when I'm like, screw, I'm leaving the headphones at home. I'm like, oh boy, Kirk, you got something to deal with. I don't know what it is, but you're having issues right now. Nothing sounds good. Yeah. Huh. Alanis Morissette
that's exactly
radio
it. And so it's weird because I don't know.
Been working for me.
All right.
Yeah. Get it finely tuned, get the right songs thumbs up, and it's beautiful. Yeah. That's what I listened to in my quality sessions the last month.
Well, and it's weird because I don't know.
Radio.
Yeah. I don't know if that. I'll try it. I'll try anything at this point.
All right.
I was gonna say it's just weird because I don't know how to get myself out of it. I've been running on trails a lot in the last week because this town of Brookfield that I was just talking about is very hilly for what I am used to in Milwaukee. For example, I think the very last Milwaukee run I did was like 82 feet of gain. The last town of Brookfield that I ran was like 600 feet, which is very hilly out there for me. So my hips been bothering me, and then my Achilles were giving me some trouble. So I've been back on the trails, and that's not really sparking joy either. So I'm lost.
We have this thing where Lisa likes the opposite of what we're doing in life with her running, right until that phase is about to change. So she was a road runner exclusively when we lived in Walworth, and then we moved out to Colorado, and we didn't know the area and kind of lived in a bad area, and she got all in on treadmill running, as we have mountains and unlimited trails. So for like 2.5 years, I'm on the trails every single day except for targeted treadmill, like compromised running that I was doing at a certain speed. She was on the treadmill every single day in Colorado. And
I did really regret that. Once I discovered the trails, I did really regret all my time on the treadmill.
It was like a month or two before we left. So right as she started to love trails, we moved home.
But I will say we had 2 small children.
Correct.
at
I'm
that
not
point.
speaking of life, just
Okay.
like they're running.
All right, go ahead.
And then we get back home, and she's just rediscovered trails. But now we only have like 2 trails within 20 minutes of our home. And if you go end to end, the longest you can get without crossing a road is like 2 miles. You can string together 8 if you are willing to cross multiple stoplights, get off the trail, come back on. So then now she discovers road running and city stride planning and is obsessed with it now. And now there's no new roads left to run. So I feel like she keeps arriving to this new love of running right as we run out of that style of running around us. So I don't know what the next thing's going to be.
Well, she trapped herself with this city strides because she's run everything. She's trapped herself.
I know, I really did.
Yeah.
I know.
You're
I
going to
really
have
did.
to move. You don't have any other choice. If we're going to keep Lisa happy, we're moving. That's what we're doing. I suggest
know.
Minneapolis.
Yeah.
I know.
Okay. You can.
How many? I'll have to look up how many streets are in Minneapolis.
Well, you have Minneapolis, you have St. Paul, you have, the metro. Anyways. Okay, from both your perspectives, what were some of the lowest moments through all this? Scariest, saddest, worst. Let's talk the lows and then we'll talk highs. From both your
Stress
perspectives. Lowest
For
moments.
sure.
Talk about it.
Yeah, I had a couple of injuries throughout. I can't remember if I talked about it when I was on here last. I had a bump on my shin, so I saw my chiropractor about it, and he was like, oh, I don't know, it's a calcium deposit or whatever. He took an x-ray and called me, and he's like, actually, that's a stress fracture. So I called my doctor and got in to get the referral, all of that. Anyway, it ended up being an old stress fracture that had healed. That was the bump, was the bone growing over that. But by that point, I had taken probably close to 6 weeks off because of the amount of time it takes to get into the doctor and to get the imaging and get the results read to you. You know, it's kind of crazy, but I won't go into that. So then I got back into running, and then I started getting shin splints in that area. So I was like, okay, now I got to back off again because I don't want it to actually do something this time where I need to take like a long time off. And actually, when I got that imaging done, the doctor was like, okay, well, the location that this is in could be really bad because there's no blood flow. It could take a very long time to heal. The good news is yours is already healing. So I was like, okay, well, that's good. But having that warning in my head kind of was like, okay, I got to actually kind of take care of this. So that sucked. That was why I didn't complete the Run the Year in 2022 was because of that. And that happened in like October, I think. So I was really close. The end of October, maybe. So I was really, really close to seeing that go through, and then false alarm and whatever. So that was a low, I would say. Do you have a low?
I think so.
Any scary moments out on any of those runs? We're talking bad still. Any oh shoot moments, or where you actually were afraid, or any crazy things in all those inner city miles?
No, actually, no, not
Nothing
really.
that stands out to you?
No, the worst thing that has happened to me while running was actually 1 block away from home. I was doing 1 mile loops around home, and a guy across the street kept yelling at me, and I had headphones in, so I was like, I could hear him, but I was like not acknowledging him. And every time I ran past, he'd yell at me. And then on my last one, I made it my last because he ran across the street and he caught up with me, and he was like running right on me basically, and I don't even know what he was trying to say, but I just like booked it home. I was like, no, thank you. Like, it's being polite. I ran home because I was a block from home, and I told Brakken, like, this guy just ran up to me. It was very scary. So Brakken went out to like see, but by that point it was over. There were just like, there are a lot of people who think they're being funny, and it's not funny. Like, as a female,
don't say
I'm
anything
5'5"
to a
and, like,
woman running ever.
Maybe.
Even if it's good job,
Ever.
I feel like even if it's, hey, way to go, it's just not appropriate no matter what. And it's the unfortunate circumstance.
I will say
it's rare for it to come off the right way.
I will say I agree. I do appreciate when they make eye contact, when a man makes eye contact and just says like hi or acknowledges you in some way. But also, like we were talking about safety, I think that is something I've come to realize is as like a smaller female, I make eye contact, but I've come to learn like how much eye contact can you make before they think you're initiating something or they want, before they want to say something to you. But also acknowledge without, like a lot of time I would just say good morning, make eye contact, say good morning, like give them a little wave or whatever and keep running, be serious about it. But like, there's like a lot of nuances that go into it because you don't want to welcome any of those advances. And like there was one time I was coming up on a gas station. It was kind of like on a bend. He jumped out of the car with his buddies and started running along with me. He's like, oh, how far are you going? I'll run with you or whatever. He was being a doofus though. And so I was just like, okay, I just try and keep running at that point because you don't want to insult them because then what happens, they like their manhood is in question and then what happens from there? It's a lot of like kind of a balancing act when you're out and men are talking to you or, like I said, think they're being funny and it's not funny.
Hello or a gesture if you're in close proximity is the only okay or welcome thing to do. Even if you have to raise your voice to make contact with that woman running, if you have to raise your voice other than conversational, you're in the wrong. Even if it's to say good job. Like that's still not, it comes off poorly. Do you know what I'm saying? In my opinion, there's no way to do that without making somebody feel uncomfortable. Unless it's a sidewalk, you're literally heading the right direction, it's an eye contact and a hello, that's probably where it stops, in my opinion. And the reason I know this is because I teach small group personal training classes every day, and we have what we call the block. Now, I train in a city called Robbinsdale, which borders North Minneapolis, which would be considered the roughest part of Minneapolis. And we also have the bus station right across the street, so we have people coming and going constantly. And I make these women run the block, mostly women, and I see the reaction to the comments, and it happens every day. And I haven't seen one, maybe like a 75-year-old man who somehow seems as sweet as can be, maybe can pull it off because he seems harmless with his cane. But other than that, even from women, it is like you can just sense the tension in the air and I can't wait to be done or get by this person or whatever. And I see it every week. I see it in some capacity because people are leaving the bus stop and feel inclined to say something. So I witness it every day. And so I'm very in touch with what people say and how it makes people feel. And it's always bad. Really, that's how I've come to learn.
It's very uncomfortable. I also really, really hate when people honk at me because I'm in my head thinking about whatever, what street am I turning on, whatever, do I need to avoid that guy over there, I see that dog, is he on a leash, whatever. I'm in my head so much and then, and it's just, I jump every time, 100% of the time. I hate it when people honk at me, and that happens a lot too.
Yeah, that's not, what is that accomplishing?
I had one guy pull up and ask if he could get my number. So just like flash him my ring, say, sorry, I'm married. But yep, a lot of the encounters are uncomfortable, even if they don't mean for them to be uncomfortable. Right. But I do think I got to the point where, I could kind of expect it. And there were many times many neighborhoods where I just knew like these neighborhoods are more vocal. People are out and they want to say something to you, good or bad, I guess.
Right.
I guess one uncomfortable one was a man. I think he he got out his cell phone. I think he was taking a picture, but he's making a big deal about a white girl running in the neighborhood. Well, I never. And he's like getting out his cell phone. White girl this, white girl that. And I was like, okay, this is uncomfortable. Keep running.
Even like a woo from across the street can come off like most people are just trying to have a good time and be goofy, right? But like you just don't know. What about women? Have you ever dealt just to get in your eyes, to get in your, look through your lens. You're coming by a woman, or being talked to or at by another woman. Is there any changes there? Has that ever been an issue for you?
No, not really. There were a few times that I passed some women who were probably, how do I say this? Looking to buy something or to sell something. And they might like say something to me. I've had a few ask for a light, and I'm like, I don't carry a lighter on me while I'm running. Like, not ever, but especially not while I'm running.
Read the situation, yeah.
Yeah. I had a couple of people ask me for cigarettes. I'm like, no, sorry, don't have those. But no, women, what?
Well, from my perspective, you maybe didn't realize how often you said it, but she ran Brookfield, which is almost all white, almost all affluent. Hales Corners, Elm Grove, all these places, and only talked about getting honked at or hassled. And she goes down into Milwaukee, and every single time it was like, Black and Hispanic women are the most encouraging people I ever meet.
So encouraging. I told Brakken if I ever run a marathon, it's going to be through those neighborhoods, actually, because those women, oh my goodness, they're so encouraging. And I actually did appreciate that, I will say. I know you said in your experience, not a man or a woman, but in mine, the women were so encouraging. And I did actually appreciate that. Sorry.
That aligns with what I've seen with my women running the block.
Be the end of it.
Wait, what's that?
Were you guys dealing with something over there?
I hit the microphone stand arm.
Unacceptable.
Thing.
No, I was just saying what you say very much aligns with what I've seen when I have my small group training clients run the block. Same exact thing. What about the other side of the coin then? What are some of the most memorable or positive things you remember? Brakken or Lisa, like what are some of the good, the memorable runs, the ones that stand out, the experience or run you won't forget, any of that stuff? A kind gesture.
I actually don't know if there's any of that necessarily either. Like my biggest takeaway was just changing my entire perception of Milwaukee. Like I said, growing up in Lake Geneva, literally all you hear about Milwaukee is the stuff on the news, which is the shootings and the crime. And just realizing that is Milwaukee, yes, but it's not only Milwaukee, or the only thing about Milwaukee. That Milwaukee is so beautiful, and for the most part, the people are so wonderful and encouraging, and just like I said, all of the beautiful architecture and the history of the neighborhoods. That's one thing I didn't mention. I also started looking up on Milwaukee County's website. They've got a history of each neighborhood. There's 151 neighborhoods, and you can look up the history of them, like who settled the neighborhood, the main influencers, and things to look out for, like so-and-so's house or this city, what's the word I'm looking for? City center or this park or whatever. So just learning, the history and then seeing it as I'm out there, I think was just so refreshing. It was such an eye-opener that, like Brakken said, with people too, you're not all one thing. And that's a really beautiful thing, I think.
It's well said.
I mean, and then there are, thank you. And then there are obviously parts of Milwaukee that are just so stunning, that are not in poverty or whatever. Like down by the lake, oh my gosh. Those houses are incredible, and the lighthouses and the like the lakefront, all of that, absolutely stunning. So that's obviously enjoyable to run through as well. Even if people aren't out, in their yards encouraging you, it's still really a quite lovely run. So I'd say those are my most positives. I don't know that I had a real positive experience with the person, because I pretty much keep to myself and don't spend a whole lot of time outside of my running in the neighborhood. Once I'm done, I want to get home because I've been gone for 2 hours already. So
yeah, I spent many days, I don't know about you, Brakken, but I guess maybe you've gone down a few times, but along the lakeshore, that's all where we ran when I was in school down there. And it's some of the best running. Loved it, and a huge running community, and there can be hundreds of runners depending on what time of day you go, and it's a running vibe, you can call it. And then you can go a mile west into the city and be the only one that would ever consider running on that street. It's just very interesting. So who should do this, Lisa? I think there's a whole sector of people who have actually everybody listening probably has a love-hate relationship with running. Some have a lot more love than hate. Some have a little more hate than love, but somehow here they are listening to this podcast. I mean, I'm the same way. Very often it's the last thing I want to do. And anybody who tells themselves otherwise is just lying themselves, right? It's not, but we see a greater good, right? We know it makes us a better person. It takes care of your anxiety. Mine the same. It helps me with everything. There's a bigger picture to all of this. And I think some people lack the clarity to that, meaning I don't know why the F I run, or why do I have to run? Just so I don't get fat? That's stupid. But that's half the people who run, right? Not about performance. And I think who I think of is someone who does struggle to get out the door. It's because they don't have maybe a big enough purpose, or the one that means enough to them to get them out no matter how they feel about the run. And so, not that you need this because you ran before this, but I could see a whole sector of the population that just struggles to run consistently or put in enough mileage to be like, this is a great option to just put time on feet and bring bigger meaning to it all. I'm assuming a lot there, but is there any... Oh, go ahead.
No, yeah. I think I was actually thinking about this when Brakken said that I would be on your podcast. I was like, okay, what do I want to talk about or make sure I don't forget or whatever? But I was thinking about this question specifically. I feel like a lot of times on your podcast, you have people who do these really amazing things, partly because they're uber talented, okay? And I am not one of those people. I may be faster than some people, but I'm not fast. And I have no desire to compete, which is, I'm sure, fairly common. But the guests on your podcast, they're out competing in these really amazing things where they're running really far, they're running really fast. And sometimes I find myself getting, to be totally honest, jealous of these people because I want to run really far and I want to run really fast. And I'm just not capable of that. This running of the streets, though, can be done. I mean, some people walk it too. So it can be done by anyone who is outside moving, basically. And you don't have to do all of the research that I was doing, or you don't have to hit literally every street, every dead end. You can make it your own thing, which is part of what I really love about it, that it took me so long because I'm not out there running 20 miles a day. I'm not running 100 miles a week. I just chipped away at it slowly. And anybody can do that. Anybody can go outside and walk every street in their neighborhood, or walk or run, or whatever the case may be. Run very slowly or run quick or whatever. And it doesn't have to be the whole town. If you, Colorado Springs has 5,000 streets. That's huge. And area speaking, or like area wise, it's probably not bigger than Milwaukee. Just Milwaukee's streets extend so far in either direction that it's probably about the same. But still, the point is, 5,000 streets is huge. Do you want to go out and run 5,000 streets? Do you not feel comfortable? That's fine. Don't run all of them. But you can chip away at whatever, and you can do the areas that, say you see this really beautiful neighborhood that you drive through every day. Go run it. Go run every street in that neighborhood and check it out. Who did you have on that was saying they do like run tour?
I think that was Leon. When he goes to a new country or city, he reaches out and says, like, who will lead me on a long run and show me your city?
Which is amazing because it's so different. Sorry, I totally cut you off. It's so different to see a city or a neighborhood on your feet rather than driving through. So, go do that.
Yeah.
Is what I think.
That's been my biggest takeaway from this, is that it changes the way you perceive a city. And there's no better way to see it. If you drive it, you don't experience it. And if you walk it, it's too slow. You'll never get it done. But when we travel now, Lisa does this wherever we go.
Everywhere.
It's like we go to Potosi, Wisconsin every year, middle of nowhere. And she's run every street there. And now she knows it. And when we went to Ireland, she ran every street in Howth. Well,
they added a street. I'm really disappointed.
They added one street.
Now I'm not 100%.
But then within a few days of us being there, she's like, hey, we should take the kids over here and hike to this church or whatever it was. Like, we wouldn't know about this. She has a more intimate knowledge and relationship with any place we go because immediately she explores on foot, which is absolutely the best way to learn a town. And like I said, I was born and raised in Milwaukee, and Lisa will have a self-admittedly bad sense of direction. And she knows everything now. When we go someplace, she's like, oh, this is right here. And right up here, I think is going to be blank street. And this is, and she can navigate us now. She's only lived here for 3-4 years. Again, time's a construct, Kirk. I don't know how long we've lived here, but she knows the city better than I do. Yeah. And it's only because of this. So I think it's something people should look into more from that standpoint alone.
I mean, even if you go run your neighborhood, your chances of like meeting your neighbors or, maybe not your direct neighbors, maybe you already know them, but the people who live a couple streets over, are greater if you're out there running past their house and discovering your neighborhood. And I'm kind of making it sound like everyone just like stays in their house or runs on just their street. But it is really, really amazing to get to know your city or your neighborhood in that way. And then it extends to the people and the culture and all of that. It's really, in my opinion, it's a really, really beautiful thing.
You're our very own Rand McNally, if you know who Rand McNally is. Ringing a bell?
Actually don't. Sorry.
Go back.
Don't get that reference.
Do you get it, Brakken?
It's on the cover of a lot of books.
Rand McNally.
That name.
Any map you would have pulled up before phones and GPS were a thing were generally a Rand McNally. So the Rand McNally was like the
all geographical
stuff. But it's like there's an age limit, and I'm just above it to remember Rand McNally, but I don't know if most are. Okay, and maybe I should have covered this. I sense we're wrapping up here, which is good. You said some really. I don't know. I think it's going to resonate with a number of people, just some of the things you've said here in the last 10 minutes. But I didn't even get to this, which we should have started with, which is how do you do this? So you download City Strides, you use something like Garmin Connect or Strava, and it overlays into, they're synced together, and then it will record what you have run within there. Is that how it works?
Yeah. Yes, exactly that. This app is called City Strides. When I started, it was just a website, so I had to load the website every time. Now it's an app.
Do you pay for it?
Yeah, they have a number of things you can connect. You do not have to, but I do because what is the perk of paying for it? Well, it's $5 a month, which is really worth it to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can sense see why.
I can't remember. Yeah, I can't remember what I don't want to like send people there and then have them have
something
to
on
pay.
the mapping feature. You
It
get
is
to zoom
something
in or
with the
something.
mapping. Yeah, something with the nodes, I think. Anyway, for me, it's worth it. But there is a free version of it.
So in essence, though, you could have
I don't know the difference.
free Strava version and the free City Strides version and make this work for free.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And maybe you know
I mean,
this.
and I'm not going to lie. Before City Strides, when I was doing West Dallas, I don't think oh, no, I did have. Anyway, when I was in the middle of this, I didn't have the paid version yet. I did draw out a map.
Oh, you did?
On like a huge piece of paper when I was doing Greenfield.
On a Rand McNally, probably.
Oh, I know what it was. I couldn't find a map. If you search Milwaukee neighborhoods, there's a million maps that come up that show you all of the neighborhoods. Like I said, there's 151 of them. But I couldn't find one neighborhood map for Greenfield. So I drew it out, and I could just find like this neighborhood is bordered by this street and this street. So I'd draw it in. I drew all the neighborhoods, and then I'd cross them off as I went. So neighborhoods are not in City Strides, but the streets are.
What about, I've already run for years on my Strava. Can I now sync up my old runs? If I create this, will it auto-populate my previous efforts so that I'm getting credit for what I've already done before I got City Strides? Do you have any idea?
That is a good question. I'm going to say a tentative yes.
I think so.
But it depends.
Because it showed Spain, right?
I don't think Spain. Oh, yeah, Spain is in there. Yeah, I think if it's been on Strava, then yeah. I tried uploading like old TomTom when I had a TomTom watch.
Do those even exist
I tried uploading
anymore?
that because I don't know.
That's a good question.
I still have the app on my phone because I have a hard time letting go of like running stuff. But when Brakken and I first got married, we lived in Walworth, and I know I've run every street in Walworth because it is very small. There's like 50 streets in Walworth. And that was on a TomTom, and I didn't have it on Strava. We weren't using Strava at that point, and so
Strava didn't exist.
And so when I started using City Strides more and more, I ran all the streets in Lake Geneva. Anytime we would be in Lake Geneva, which is, again, where my parents live. And then, like, kind of working my way around the lake, and nothing counted in Walworth. So I'm slowly rerunning Walworth streets. But I think if it's on Strava, it will load, yes. It's also just interesting to see. I had Brakken upload his, I created an account for Brakken because I was like, I want to see how many times you've actually run with me. And you just see like these little, the streets are purple, so you just see like little purple blurbs throughout Milwaukee. Like, yeah, that's a bad one.
I could see that. So
and you don't know this. We haven't talked about this. I didn't know about the TomTom thing, but you can take those files, and I could manually load them as computer files to Strava, and then they could then populate.
I'll have to give you my app and see what we can do.
But yes, it will backlog.
Is there a version? We have a whole trail running sector. Is there a, I don't know, trail city streets version or a bike path or other intricacy type apps or versions? I have a feeling trail runners may be interested in this. Do you know anything about that?
That's a good question. And this website started pretty small. I don't know when it started, but it was small enough that like if I couldn't find my run, I would go, there's like a forum on it. You could go ask your question, and the creator of the website will answer you. So now it's an app. They still have a forum section. And I was actually I had a question the other day. I can't remember what, but I went to that just to see if someone else had mentioned it. And that was mentioned that they would love to have a trail version of it. He actually, the creator of it actually like kind of threw that out in the forum. Like, how many of you would be interested? So I don't know. If you are interested, maybe get the app and then go to that forum and let them know that you are interested in that. I'm not, so I left it alone.
I have two more questions. You live in Podunk, northern Minnesota, town of 500. the city streets cover everything. You can run the county highway. Do you know if it expands even to the most rural places? Do you have any insight there? Does it
just in case anyone listens, it's city strides.
Oh wait, what did I say?
You keep saying city streets, so I just don't want to confuse
city
people.
strides.
City strides.
Silly me. Do you know about that?
There were when I started, there were cities that were not included. Anything that was like township of, or I'm just gonna keep going back to this. Lake Geneva is the city of Lake Geneva, and then around it is the town of Lynn, or even town of Geneva, I think, is like the surrounding area. Like none of that counted, but in like the very recent past, they've updated it so that all of those town of, township of, village of, all of those are counted now. It does not count like highways or those like really big highways or freeways. Like they don't want you out on those. There are some sketchy areas still. You can go in and change it. They show you, or they tell you how to go in and modify so that you're not running on like a dangerous street. I'm not good enough for that. So there are some areas that just the other day I was running, I was like, I should not be on this street. This is way too busy.
Right.
But it's all, for the sake of the node.
And what's the guy's name?
Who does it? Mm-hmm. James.
James has been really good. I don't know him, but I've just watched their brief interactions. We traveled once, and Lisa was like, hey, can you do this? And he was like, give me a minute. And like loaded up a new town. So
it was when we were in Ireland.
Was that what it is?
Yeah, it wasn't on there yet. So there's an entire spreadsheet where you can add your city if it's not on there. So all around the world, there's cities. So I added it to that, and I popped in the forum. I was like, hey, just wondering if Hoth can be added. And then he actually responded. He was like, okay, I'm seeing 3 different maps. Do you know where it extends out to? I was like, well, I'm just here on vacation, but I only ran up to here, so it's probably only...
It's just the streets I ran, and I've checked them all off.
Yeah.
Last question, and then we got to wrap, only because I got to go to work. So what is next? If you had your quick knee-jerk answer, do you have one yet? Like, what are we doing next? What's the next pursuit? Is it another city? Is it something different? Is this your thing forever? What are you thinking?
We're going to have to move soon, but there are a few, like town of Brookfield is the closest. I'm working
How serious are you when you would say that?
South
We're joking
Milwaukee
about it,
right
though.
Now.
Like, we're going to have to move soon. Like, what level of seriousness is there to that?
I just love this area so much now. I don't think I could ever leave, like, Milwaukee at this point. I just love it so much. I've become so obsessed. So I will keep filling in. There are some areas on my map. My map is not, like, a very pretty map at the moment. I need, like, Glendale, South Milwaukee, like the actual town of South Milwaukee, not south of Milwaukee. Anyway, town of Brookfield, New Berlin I'm still working on, Fox Point, which is like northeast on the lake. Kind of looking forward to that one. But all of these are such long drives that while my kids are home for summer, I don't want to be gone so long. But I think once they get back to school, maybe I'll be able to, Brakken's pretty busy throughout the day working and whatnot. So I'll have a little bit more time. I think that's what I'm going to do is keep working on it. And I'm just going to have to keep thinking, like, what can I do after this? Because realistically, at some point, this is going to end.
There's one thing left on her bucket list, and that is to run a marathon. And she's not ready to recommit yet, but at some point, we have to run one marathon.
And by run,
she'll regret it if she doesn't.
Run as in complete, right?
Yeah, because I'm not fast. So I won't be setting any records.
Like, will time matter to you?
Obviously it will.
Okay.
It'll really matter to me, and I'm
problem.
And I'm pretend like it doesn't really matter.
You really live in that abyss.
But it will.
All right.
It's really terrible. I just wish I was more talented. That's what it comes down to. I'm just not talented enough.
Don't we all?
But c'est la vie.
Well, I'm going to toot her horn, though, because we didn't get to this. But she is the second person to complete Milwaukee and the first female. Oh. Only one other person ever did it. It was a guy. So this, while she may not claim to be fast, this was in a very esoteric community, historic.
Thanks, Brakken.
What a historical accomplishment. That's actually pretty dang cool. 2 people. And records are kept. How does one know about this? I guess that could be something people would hang their hat on. I'm the only person to run these streets. How do they know that?
Yeah, it's just it's in the app.
In
So
the app,
maybe
okay.
someone outside of the app has done it, but I highly doubt it.
It's
I'm
not
sure
on
nobody
Strava.
has.
It didn't happen.
Well, for this episode,
The only one.
I would love to see, like, I guess a picture on your phone can do it justice, but like the highlight route map, you said it's in blue. Is it blue you said? I would love Purple. Sorry,
Yeah,
I would
purple.
love to see that map. That would be very satisfying. All those miles. All right.
Maybe
well,
when you guys post this on Instagram.
Yeah, we need to do better. We were doing good for a while, and we've kind of slipped a little bit. Okay.
Here's the thing about the map. You don't realize how big and expanding it is when you just look at it. I need to do a screen grab where I start where you can just see like that half mile by half mile. Did you see that? Actually, I posted that.
No, let's do like
after
a
I
10
finished.
slide
and then when you
zoom out.
zoom out,
Yeah.
zoom out.
Do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you realize like, whoa, okay, that's a lot. But when you just see it all together, you don't realize the scope of it, I think. So, anyway.
Yeah, we'll need a scale for
Toot my own
reference.
horn.
Hey, no, toot
It's
away.
huge.
Lots of toots in that room. All right. I got to go. Otherwise, I'm going to be late for work. So, Brakken, anything you want to say to wrap
All
this
right,
thing
don't
up?
be late.
Lisa, thank you.
Of course. Yes, if there's anything.
Yeah,
you
you
wanna
did
say.
well. That was good.
Thanks.
Your husband approves.
You want one more compliment before we leave?
No, I just didn't know if you had something to say to wrap it up.
Her breath is better than mine by the end of this. I'll say that.
Does Brakken have bad breath right now? Be honest.
Yeah, I have post-workout breath.
Nah, I can't smell it. But we were both having smoothies, so it's got to be the same.
I have coffee breath, my iced coffee here, but nobody has to deal with that. So, okay, we're done.
Yeah,
it's
that's
time.
good.
Thanks for listening, guys. Thanks, Lisa.
All
Thanks,
right.
Brakken.
See ya.